This is Democracy Watch. Mark, this is the worst I told you so that we've ever had, because just a few weeks ago we were talking about all the crazy ways that Donald Trump could point to foreign countries, thanks to Tulsi Gabbard interfering in the 2020 election as a pretext to be able to suppress votes in this election. And lo and behold, that is exactly what happened today, with a bombshell memo dropping that claims China interfered in the 2020 election, and that's being used by the Trump team as a basis to declare a national emergency that would unlock extraordinary presidential power over voting. So, first question at the top, is this going to work for Trump?
It is not going to work for Trump, but it goes to show just how far he and his administration and his supporters are willing to go to subvert elections, to try to rig the outcome, and to try to destroy democracy. This is an absolute wake-up call for everyone who has sat on the sidelines and has told me and you and others who have been sounding this alarm that we are going too far and that we're scaring people. Well, if people are not scared after reading what's going on in this memo and the efforts by the Trump administration to potentially turn this into an executive order, then I don't know what's wrong with them. This is a 5-alarm fire. Everyone needs to wake up, be paying attention to this, subscribe to this channel, because it's where Brian and I are talking about this and giving you the news before the fucking legacy media wakes up to it.
Well, I'm going to put the link to this channel, by the way, right here on the screen for those who are looking to subscribe. Mark, talk to me for a moment about what's actually in this memo, because that's going to be a main character as we move closer and closer to the election.
Yeah, so the memo is bonkers. I mean, let's just lay it out at the beginning that nothing I'm about to describe makes any sense. So if as I go along, you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Right. It doesn't make any sense. This is a bonkers memo. But look, it was only a few weeks ago that Donald Trump posted on social media, and we'll put it up right here. I have searched the depths of legal arguments not yet articulated or vetted on this subject, and will be presenting an irrefutable one in the very near future. Okay. This was cryptic, first of all, why is legal capital L and arguments capital A?
Yeah, that's a 10-year battle that we've been waging. But go
what
on.
Does it mean that they are not yet articulated or vetted? What does this all mean? Well, look, this may be very well what Donald Trump had read, this crazy memo that says under these unrelated federal statutes, he has the power to declare an emergency, and that somehow that emergency power would then give him the power to disrupt voting, to not let certain voting equipment be used, to ban mail-in ballots. You know, the irony of all of this, Brian, is that the memo cites 2 statutes. One is the National Emergencies Act, which is not relevant. And the other is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Now, if that sounds familiar, Brian, that is because that is actually the statute that Donald Trump relied on to impose the tariffs that the U.S. Supreme Court said he doesn't have the authority to use for tariffs. So what on earth leads him to believe he has this power to somehow take over elections under a statute that they've actually said he can't even use for tariffs, that is actually supposed to govern emergency economic powers? I mean, it's bonkers, but Brian, it's also terribly worrisome. And it is a big threat to democracy as we move forward. And what I'm worried about here, Brian, is not that this is going to stand up. I mean, I've already said it and I'll say it again now. If Donald Trump signs an executive order trying to take over any aspect of voting, and I mean any aspect, even 1 centimeter of voting, he's going to get sued by me and my law firm, and we're going to beat him like a drum. The last time he tried to do it in an executive order, that's what we did. We sued and we won. And this one, we will sue again and we will win again. But Brian, what worries me is that the legacy media is treating this with respect and with plausibility and elevating it as if it is something other than a crackpot theory. I mean, the Washington Post, which kudos, was the first news outlet to cover this. It says in the sub-headline, activists who say they are in coordination with the White House are circulating a draft executive order that would unlock extraordinary presidential power over voting. I'm sorry, unlock? No. It's not unlocking power. It is making up out of thin air. It is an authoritarian takeover. It is a wannabe dictator, promulgating something that violates the Constitution. Like, how the hell does the legacy media refer to this as unlocking extraordinary presidential power over voting? There is no extraordinary presidential power over voting to be unlocked. And so I keep saying that people have to subscribe to this channel, Brian, because A, I think you do a great job, but also because of the goddamn legacy media failing us. And now we've got Barry Weiss, who's going to run CNN.
Yeah. And by the way, that underscores more than anything the need for people who are looking to elevate your voice, Mark, your voice in this ecosystem. They can do so by subscribing to Democracy Docket, which is the news outlet you founded to focus on everything voting and election, not just because you are not going to do a both sides framing on issues like this one, but to your point, we now found out that David Ellison is also going to own CNN as this merger is going to go through, which means that Republicans are going to own CBS, CNN, TikTok, Twitter. I mean, the majority of media in this country will be owned by Trump allies and Trump acolytes. And so it's never been more important to highlight, elevate, and support the voices that are going to be willing to tell the truth in this environment. And yours is top among them. So I'm going to put the link to Democracy Docket right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video.
Can I ask one further question on this, Brian? And
yeah.
I know we're going to get back to this memo because it's really important, but one of the things that I think has been overlooked in this Ellison thing that I want you to speak to, because you live out in Southern California, is it's not just he's going to have extraordinary power over the media, but Steve Bannon famously said that politics is downstream from culture, and he will have extraordinary powers over culture, right? Donald Trump's preferred owner of big companies is going to have extraordinary power over culture, right? Because of the studios.
Correct. And we've already seen the way in which that kind of manifests itself in real life. We have seen the attacks that right-wingers have made on comedians who are committing the apparent crime of doing satire against Republicans. Jimmy Kimmel is a testament to exactly that. The fact that Stephen Colbert's The Late Show was canceled is a testament to that. Things are not going to get better now that ownership of these media companies that own all of these properties has consolidated among just this small sliver of right-wingers whose sole goal is to elevate Donald Trump, elevate the Republican Party. It's only going to get worse, and it's going to pervade culture in a big way. And frankly, there are people who exist in this ecosystem who are highly engaged voters, highly engaged audience members, but there's a lot of people who aren't, and they're not going to know that they are going to turn into the victims of right-wing ownership of these companies whose sole goal is to help themselves spread the gospel, spread the MAGA gospel, so that they can keep Republicans in power, so that they can get tax cuts for themselves. And that really is the sad part of all of this, which again is why it's so important to elevate voices like yours and news outlets like yours.
Yeah. So look, this is connected in a really critical way. At the same time that we have the Donald Trump in the White House and the FCC playing clear favorites in who will control the large institutions of information, we have the President of the United States relying on a crackpot theory to take over elections. And these two are directly connected, because you will not know that this is, in fact, a crackpot theory. You will not know that what Donald Trump is doing is not issuing an executive order, but rather a dictatorial decree, an authoritarian order to take over free and fair elections, to deprive you the right to vote, to deprive you of the results of a level playing field democratic process. You won't know that because the people who are charged with telling you that are his people, are his sycophants. And so that's why I connect these two. And look, as I said, I'm not worried that this memo is going to turn into something that is going to be durable, because the fact is, if Donald Trump signs his executive order, as I said, we will sue and we will win. What I am worried about is that when we do sue, there will be this sense, well, on the one hand, the Trump administration says they've unlocked extraordinary executive power. And on the other hand, Mark Elias and lawyers say that this is too far. And even though the courts will rule in our favor, what happens when we get to September, October, November of next year? And now Donald Trump is saying, well, I need to send the FBI to seize ballots. I need to put ICE around polling places. I need to do these other things because of this rationale that I was not able to effectuate in an executive order. And I just don't have confidence that the elite institutions of this country will stand up and call that out for the bullshit it is. So that's the reason why I draw this connection. And it's why for the third time, I'm going to beg people to subscribe to this channel.
All right, well, Mark, it's worth asking here, is there anything in advance of this executive order being handed down that we can do to stop it so that we don't have to allow this thing to be dropped possibly 5 minutes before the election when it's too late for the courts to actually effectively step in?
Right. And then, you have they're going to argue Purcell, and we'll say Purcell doesn't apply because it's not a state law. It's a presidential executive order. We're right on that, by the way. But yeah, that's the concern, right? The concern is that Donald Trump may not issue this executive order in February of 2026 or even March of 2026, or he may issue this one in February and March of 2026, but then issue a new one, as you say, right as mail-in ballots are supposed to go out. And what happens if he issues an executive order banning mail-in ballots, literally the days before mail-in ballots are going out? Look, I wish I could tell you that we could sue in advance against crackpot ideas. I wish we could go to court and be like, look, Your Honor, there are going to be a lot of really crazy things that Donald Trump is going to want to do. And I'd like you to just put a kibosh on all of them. Unfortunately, as you know, and the audience knows, that isn't how standing works. It isn't how the courts work. So what it's going to mean is that we have to be really diligent. And, my law firm and I, we are in 80 cases now. I'm sorry, actually 85 cases in 40 states. And by the way, that number is going to grow because the Department of Justice also just sued 5 more states for their voter files. But we just have to be vigilant and just keep paying attention to everything that's happened and be prepared to act immediately. Back in 2021, when Georgia passed its big voter suppression law, we sued within an hour of Kemp signing it. By the time we got to Florida and DeSantis signing their big voter suppression law, we sued 6 minutes after he signed it. These are the kinds of things that we are going to need lawyers, whether it's me and my law firm or others, other legal organizations. We need to be built not just to be right, but to be right and fast. And that, I think, is going to be something that I know you're going to be on top of and we'll be talking about in this series. It's something we cover and I write about in Democracy Docket, the news outlet I founded, because that speed element is going to be the difference between it being too late for 2026 or being in time.
Perfectly put. We'll leave it there. Again, for those who are watching, to support Mark's work, to elevate his voice in this ecosystem, which is desperately needed, the best way to do that is to subscribe to Democracy Docket. That link is right here on the screen. And of course, if you want to see more videos of Democracy Watch, you can subscribe to this channel as well. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.